Morning, Ruvain.
Good morning, Rabbi Green.
What a pleasure it would be to sleep late every day.
Don't let him.
What's your lesson? You're not into sewing, but you sure know how to needle. Good gazoo. Good gazoo. Good gazoo. Wow. Good gazoo.
I doff my cap to you.
What's wrong with Ruvain that he doesn't come?
He sleeps late.
That's
The
the only reason.
That's the only reason.
Well, you don't know.
whatever.
Are we learning today, Ruvain?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
So he just
You have to hope that he's okay.
he knows how to Zoom. I can't do that because I don't know how to Zoom.
Okay. Let me just. Today's the 24th. Huh? Tisha B'Av is Midchat 2 weeks from today. We'll have to start figuring out how we're going to handle it.
Bishop is not yet.
In 2 weeks, 2 weeks from
2 weeks from today.
Yeah, but I'm going to have to start thinking how to structure.
What are we going to do? We're going to speed up.
That's what I said. I have to start thinking now how we plan it
Okay,
for that. For that.
that would be good.
Double it up.
So that I'm going to start thinking how best to plan it, and
Go
then
a
we'll
little
see.
bit each day, a little extra.
See.
Starting now,
We'll see. Well, that's why. Let me think.
Yeah, why let's shift for 2 weeks? You could do it.
You
maybe-
do 5 extra lines, 10
You take a
extra
look,
lines.
you know, Hashem will help you look at the block.
Yeah, I'll look
You
at.
find it'll be very small.
We'll see. That's what I've got to do. I've got to see where it would
Yeah,
be
that's all.
and things like that, and then we'll talk during the week how best to do to do it. A year of learning, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren of Toby Paris. I assume that Marty's coming in. I don't know.
Marty, I don't know.
You don't know?
Maybe he's going to get his wife or something.
No, she's not coming home today.
No. She's gonna go
How do they throw you out
She's going
fast?
to a,
No?
She's got to go. She's got to do rehab.
rehab.
Children, grandchildren, great grandchildren of Toby Paris, Saratova, Bad Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends of Nina Monester, Nechama Hasna, Bad Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Elezechin Nishmat Simcha Melech B'Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha and Bas Rivka. Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister, Kaya Rachel Bas Issa. Have a month of learning by Malin Haran Haller in memory of his brother Yaakov ben Avraham. Jill and Perry Meltzer in memory of Jill's mother, Bela Bas Avraham, and Perry's father, David ben Fishel Halevi. Mark Linder in memory of his mother, Yonah ben Bat Zalman Leib. Rabbi Isaac Schmerler in memory of his wife, Menasima Bat Yitzchak, and the friends of Marilyn Schmerler in her memory, Menasima Bat Yitzchak. We have a week of learning by Judy Iger in memory of her father-in-law, Shlomo Michael ben Aaron, by Sid Paris in memory of his wife, Saratova Bat Yisrael Dov, by Jack Gilman in memory of his father, Elka Bat Yeshayahu. Today being the 24th.
Yeah.
Right? That is it. May the
24th.
Shemas have an aliyah, crank refill, Velti Shir Shematzvia, Machol Ben Israel, Greek to Ben Shia. Okay. All right. On the bottom of Yud Zion Amud Beis is where we're going to pick up that very last line. Okay, is where we got to yesterday. Just a quick review. Okay, then we're talking about mecha'ah, protesting, in terms of a situation of somebody who claimed the land, claimed the property, okay, a squatter, and it refers to the chazaka. We said that was 3 years. And then what happened? Well, maybe it was 2 years when the father was alive, and 1 year was when the son. Okay, and that
Or the son was a minor.
well, the son could have been, or the son could have even been an adult, if not a minor in age, an adult in age, but still like a minor in terms of awareness of his father's properties and businesses and things like that. Okay, and then they talked about basically that can there be a protest if you're not in the same location. Okay, and he dafka used the example of Yehuda and Galil. And remember, we should be familiar, or should be aware rather, of the fact that there was Samaritan territory that was fairly significant. Okay, so Galil was the upper, what we would call today in Israel, the upper Galil. Okay, then there was a whole stretch of going from basically Hebron all the way to the coast, which was the land of the Samaritans. And then below that was the area known as Judea. Okay, so there was a stretch of land that separated the two. That's number one. Number two, we're going to see the Gemara is going to raise the point as we finish up, right? That it said basically, V'ika savar mecha'a shelo b'fanav lo havya mecha'a, afilu Yehuda v'Yehuda nami lo. Okay, that was the point. Even within the same question, it's problematic. Same area, same province. Let's use that word for the moment. Amar Rabbi Abba bar Memel, Rabbi Leolam kesavar mecha'a shelo b'fanav havya mecha'a. But Rabbi Abba bar Memel said, no, basically, they did hold that a protest made in another province, another location, could still be a valid protest. Umatnitin b'sha'at cherum shanu. And that's where we finished. And our Mishnah focused on a time when there was emergency situations. It was a time of what we talked about. Okay, warfare, things like that. Decree, could have been during, again, the Hadrianic decrees, things like that. Okay, so the implication clearly here is that if it's an emergency, why does the halacha apply only to these two locations? Why did he cite these? Okay, because the Gemara is good. We're going to get to right. Umay shna Yehuda v'Galil. The Nakat, so why was it, he said, that he chose these two locations if he's talking about a shat cherum, a difficult time period, a problematic emergency situations? That leads us to Yud Chet, okay? So the implication could be then, all right, even within the same province, then the halacha should still apply, okay? So the Gemara then answers us, the Stam Yehuda v'Galil b'Shabbat Cherum Damu, that even in I'm going to call for the moment a standard situation, not in a time of warfare or Shas Chirum, even then there could be a problem with trying to do a mecha'ah in one place and going to the other, because either there was constant warfare, or the distance, the separation between the two made it problematic, so that one person would be aware of a protest made by another person if they were in, sometimes even in the same province. Okay? So the Gemara says, is going to continue now. And remember, we've said prior to this that on what was the basis of all of this discussion, hapesha asar upesha hitir. That was the implication. And so we're raising behind this that concept of how does that get derived and applied, right? So the Gemara suggests as follows, Vilitne. So let's say that section, that discussion, okay, of our Mishnah, where it said that Rabbi, okay,
Yeshua is my.
okay, Ted, there's an art scroll right there.
Oh, there's not scroll. I feel
Okay.
very
All right.
privileged. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late. I thought this was held in the shul and I was waiting there for people to come in. Okay.
All right, we're on Yud Chet Amud Aleph. Okay. All right, so he's basically now raised the following. So let's learn it from it. Let's learn that piece of Mishnah if we're talking about a Pesha Asar Pesha Hitir. If we're learning that as the basis, okay, can we derive it from another source where Rabbi Yeshua's modeh?
Why did we take this strange case of this strip of land when there are much broader cases?
Well, there
like
are other
regular law?
examples, perhaps, and we're going to see the Gemara is going to try to make an
Couple of-
effort of
but
other
I-
examples.
I would wonder if you're talking Pesha Iser, the best case that the Mishnah could have brought, and the Gemara never even brings it up, is a girl it comes to the Sadar Kedushin, and they're writing the Kesuba, and they start writing 200. She says, no, I used to be married, but I got divorced. That would be a Pesha Iser, Pesha
Right,
Hetir,
right.
and that would be fit the Mishnah better. But they don't raise that case, and in the discussion, at least so far, 2 pages from now, they haven't
still
raised
don't.
that.
All right, well,
Okay,
Mashiach comes,
so
we'll
what
find out,
happens,
okay?
so you'll ask, right? All right, so what happens? So maybe we're going to say Modeh Rabbi Yeshua, second line, okay, on the Amud. Ba'omer lechavero, that when Rabbi Yeshua was Modeh, what did he say? In other words, what was said? He was learning it from the following possible example, okay?
Why didn't?
Right? In other words, why didn't he apply the principle of Pesha Asar? Okay, so here's the situation. The person says, Maneh Leviti Mimcha Uprativ Lach, okay, that I borrowed 100 zuz from you and I paid you back. Shahune Aman, and the person is believed. Why is that? Mishum de Kabai Lemitne Sefer. Why we say? Because he really wanted to teach this issue, this principle, okay, for what comes later in our Mishnah. Im yeshedim shehu laveh mimenu v'hu omer prativ eino ne'eman. That if there are witnesses that come and say that he borrowed from him and then claimed that he paid him back, in that case, he's not believed, okay, because they're the witnesses are going to trump, okay, his claim of theoretically Peshasa, right? Vaha Kaimalan. But here we hold what? Okay, what's our understanding? Hamalve et chavero be'edim, that one who takes out a loan from a person and has this done with edim, with witnesses present, eino tzarich lefaro be'edim. He does not need to have witnesses present when he pays him back.
So you can't use that.
So you can't seem to use that case. Okay, that would give a basis for Pesha Asar. Okay, says the Gemara. Let's try another example. V'litnei, so let him teach. Modeh Rabbi Yoshua ba'omer lechavero, that Rabbi Yoshua would acknowledge when the person says in the following situation, Maneh la'avicha biyadi, okay, 100 zuz that belong to your father, I have now, right? V'ha'achaltiv pras, okay, and I basically used half of it,
I gave
okay,
you back.
and I paid back half of it, right? Shahu ne'aman, that he should be believed. Aliba deman, according to whom? I aliba de Rabbanan. If we're going to say that in this case we're going to hold, Rabbi Yeshua holds like the rabbis, Ha-amre meshiva veda have. In this case, however, the rabbis would be saying, this is no different than a situation of hashavat aveda, returning a lost object. Okay, and therefore no oath would be required in that situation. So how could you argue then the application of Pesha Asar? I aliba de Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. And if you're going to say that in this case we're going to follow the Shita of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Ha'amar Shavua Bai, who says here that a oath is nevertheless required, right? The Tanya Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Omer, as we're taught in the Braita, that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says as follows: Pa'amim she'adam nishba al ta'anat atzmo, that there are times when a person must take an oath, even in regards to his own statement, his own claim. Ketzad, how is that possible? If the person says, Maneh la'avich biyadi, v'achaltiv pras, I had 100 zuz that had belonged to your father, and I paid back half. Harei zenishba, according to him. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer says he must nevertheless take an oath. V'zehu shenishba al ta'anat atzmo. And that would be a situation where the person must take an oath in regarding his own claim. The Chachamim omrim, but the sages disagree and say as follows: Eino elik meshiv aveda upatur. No, that's really no different than returning the person a lost object, and therefore they're exempt from any kind of oath in that situation. Okay. The Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, we ask now, in regards to his perspective, Litle Meshiv Aveda Patur, do we then say that he doesn't hold that when one returns a lost object, he's exempt? And that was a question. Amar Rav, says Rav, B'ta'ano Katan. So Rav says it was the claim when in the court, when it was brought up by a minor. V'ha'amar mar, but didn't the master say elsewhere, Ein nishba'in al ta'anat cheresh shotev v'katan, that we don't require in the Beis Din, okay, that the person make a vow when it's a claim that was presented by, either a person who is deaf, not mentally competent, or a minor. So the Gemara says, wait a second, my katan. What do we mean when we use the phrase here, katan? Do we really mean a minor in age? Gadol. Maybe the person who brought the claim is an adult chronologically, but we only are going to consider him a minor in terms of his awareness of what the father's properties and values have, right? And that's what we're saying. V'amai kare le katan. Why then are we using the language of calling him a minor? Delegabe mile de aviv katan hu. That regarding the words, but here it really means the property, the affairs, the monetary affairs and statements, etc., of the father. In that regard, he is considered like a minor. So the Gemara goes on and tells us, Ihachi, if that be the case, Ta'anat Atzmo. What about if it was a situation where the claim was made by himself? Ta'anat Acherim hi. But this is a claim that was made by others. Right? That's the point. So what happens? Ta'anat Acherim v'hoda'at atzmo. Maybe we're saying the claim was made by others, okay? But he is the one who presented, announced it in the Beis Din. So the Gemara then responds.
No, he acknowledges.
Right. Okay. Well, in a sense.
Not he announces, but he
V'hoda'a
acknowledges.
atzmo. Okay, well, he's making it aware that he's acknowledging and stating that. Kulhe ta'anata, ta'anat achirim b'hoda'at atzmoninu. No, the Gemara tells us, wait a second, any situation brought to the Beis Din is a claim that's a claim made by others and an acknowledgement, okay, by that person, okay, in our situation. That's a normal Beis Din situation. Ella rather, hacha. In this case, all right, bidarabba kemiflagin, that maybe the Rabbi Eliezer and the sages are arguing in regards to how Rava explained the scenario. Da'amar Rava, because this is what we say Rava explained it, how he explained it. Mipnei ma amrat Torah modem miktsat hata'ana yishava. What was the basis? How did Rava explain that the Torah basically, I'm going to use the word requires, okay, for the moment, okay, that if one only acknowledges something in part, okay, vis-a-vis a claim, that they must make an oath. Chazaka, okay, all right, we have this legal presumption. Ein adam me'iz panav b'fnei ba'al chovo, that a person does not dare to challenge or
Completely denied.
deny, or okay, completely deny would also be good. Okay, challenge the claim before the person in front of him directly in the court situation. Okay, right? Vahai bekula ba'ila de la kapre. And here in this case, maybe he wanted to deny the entire amount. Okay, maybe that was the case. Vahai de lo kaparle mishum de eina dame is panavhu. And maybe the fact that he did not deny the entire amount was because he was hesitant to be so brazen. I'll use that word for a moment. Okay, to do so there in front of the claimant, in front of the Beis Din. Okay. Let's go to Abriut. The next one. Uvekula Abriut Bae Dure Le. Okay. But in regards to the total amount, that's what he wanted. But he was going to say to admit the total amount, he wasn't prepared to do so. Vahai delo adele ki hechi delishtamet le v'savar ad dahavale zuze per anale.
There's a second rationale.
Right. This approach is, so why didn't he do what he wanted to do? The fact that he did not admit, okay, that he wanted to avoid the total payment. Maybe we're going to say the situation is as follows. V'savar ad dahavale zuze, that he wanted to put it off, thinking that when I have the adequate amount of money, that's when I'm going to pay him back. The Rachmana Amar, but the Torah nevertheless says, Rame Shvue Ale, okay, present, throw up, okay, in other words, you must have a vow under this situation. Ki hechi delo de le bekule. Okay, I'm going to say it lest it be such that he would admit in regarding the whole.
Make him swear,
okay,
and then he'll have to acknowledge the whole debt.
Right. Well, I was going to phrase it a little differently. Okay, that were he to admit the entire amount, that was the reason he was only admitting partial. Okay, because he didn't want to admit the total amount. Okay,
because he wasn't able to pay it.
Because he might not have the money.
Either he wants a wiggle out of it, but he's afraid to be so obnoxious. So he says, I paid part back.
Right.
Or he doesn't have the money.
Or he doesn't have the money. Either way, he's making a statement. Okay. What happens? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Savar. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion, the following, right? Lo shana bo, velo shana bibno. But maybe there's no difference of how brazen he is hesitant to act, whether it's front of the person who has the claim or in front of the heir, the
Who
son.
doesn't know?
Okay, a no me'is, that he doesn't then act that manner. Vehilkach lav meshiv aveda have. And in that situation, it would not be similar to the return of a lost object. V'Rabbanan savre, whereas the rabbis of the opinion, bohu de'ino me'is, in front of the claimant, okay, he would not act brazenly. Aval bibno me'is,
He doesn't
but
know.
since the young man who might even still be an adult chronologically is not totally familiar with his father's assets and business affairs, maybe in front of him he would act more brazenly. In that case, umidelo heiz meshiv aveda have. And since he wouldn't act that manner, the rabbis then nevertheless felt it could still be considered like returning a lost object, and no requirement for a oath. Okay, so that ends that item. Okay, new Mishnah. Just a quick introduction, and then we'll go into the text. Okay, there's a case, and Shraga Feivel and I were asked to be the witnesses on this case. Okay, and what happens? Michael and Bob and Harvey are the based in. Okay,
I'm the guy with the gun.
Wait. Okay, and what happens? And in this case, okay, the based in sends a messenger to Shraga Feivel and myself, and they tell us, we want you to attest that the signature in this case is your signatures. Okay, now that can be done in one of three ways. Shraga Feivel and I can come to the based in and testify, sure enough, that's our signatures. Okay, we remember signing that on, June 23rd. Okay, or the second case would be, no, the based in takes another document that has our signatures on it, okay, and compares the signatures there to this document. That's a second example. And the third is that what happens is that Irwin and Ted come to the based in as other witnesses, and they say, oh yeah, we know Shraga Feivel and Ken Green's signatures, and that's their signatures. So there are three possible ways, okay, that there can be testimony to validate those signatures. Okay, being aware of that, we now can go into our Mishnah. Thank you. Okay, Matnitin, the Mishnah teaches as follows: Ha'edim she'amru k'tav yadenu hu zeh. The witnesses who said, this is our signatures, right? Aval anusim hayinu, okay, but they claim we were forced to do it. Ketanim hayinu, we signed it when we were minors. Psule edut hayinu, for some reason we say we were invalid witnesses. I was a relative to the person that was one of the claims.
Shraga Feivel was a gambler.
Okay, well, whatever.
What's your name?
Chas v'shalom. Okay, hare elu ne'amanim. Okay, then in those situations, okay, if any of these items came up, they are believed. V'im yesh edim shehu k'tav yadam, and if there were witnesses, coming back to our initial case, that the witnesses came in person to testify to the based in, okay, oh shahaya k'tav yadam yotzei mimakom acher, or it came from another source, einan ne'amanim, then they would not be believed. So Gemara asks as follows: Amar Rami Bar Chama, Rami says as follows: Lo shanu Ela she'amru anusim hayinu mechamat mamon. They didn't teach this, except in a situation that they wouldn't be believed when they said we were forced out of financial situations.
We were bribed.
Okay, either we could say we were bribed, or they were said that we had some other financial interest involved in this case. Okay, and that was the case. Aval anusim hayinu michamat nefashot. But if they were said we were forced to sign because of concern for our lives, hare elu ne'amanim, then they are believed. Okay, what happens? Amar le Rava, and Rava says to them, okay, in this situation, kol kamine, okay, in this case, in regarding the right, can they really retract? Can we really believe them under these circumstances? Kevan shehigid shuveino chozer magi. Once they've signed, it's
Once
no
they
different,
stated-
right? Well, it's once they've signed, it's no different than if they have verbally stated the situation. Okay, they can't retract. That's the point. That's the point, right? Eino chozer magi. V'chi tema hani mili al peh. And if you were going to say that this text was then done, okay, verbally, aval
that rule applies.
right?
That they cannot
right?
retract.
Can't retract.
if the whole
Aval
thing is
b'shtar,
verbal.
but maybe if that only applies if it was done orally by a verbal testimony. Aval b'shtar. But if you're talking simply, quote, simply about a document, no,
Then you
maybe that
can
doesn't, maybe they
reissue
could
it.
recant under a different, on a
Wait,
document.
I want to make sure I understand. You're saying under a document it'd be easier to recant than by saying it verbally? I would,
Yeah, if
I would,
you-
I would intuit
I
the
would say
opposite.
both.
Well,
No,
The
once once a witness appears at best, and there's a Drisha and Hikira, in other words, cross-examination, then they dismiss the witness. You cannot recall him, and he cannot now, even if he was not telling the truth earlier, you cannot recall him for him to alter his testimony.
would that be true even if he said, I came across evidence now and now what I said
Once
was
he
wrong?
left the court,
Even
that's
no
the end of
exception.
that.
Kamanu
Well,
is
well,
done.
Once he left the
Okay,
court,
okay.
that's that.
Okay, but what happens,
But here it's a document that
right?
you're
So that's the
validating.
question of the document, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, right? So what happens? Vaha. But here, says the Gemara, Amar Reish Lakish, Eidim hachatumim al hashtar, ne'eseh kami shenechkara edutan b'beit din. That once somebody has signed on the document, it's no different, says Reish Lakish, than it had been cross-examined in the court.
So he's questioning, even with the document. Sure.
Ela ki itma, but when that was said, aresha itma. And that was when it was said by Rami, okay, it was on the earlier part of the Mishnah, namely, hare elu ne'amanim, where it said that they were to be believed. So what happens? Amar Rami bar Chama, lo shanu ela she'amru anusim hayinu michamat nefashot, where he said this was only taught in a that they were believed in we apply that in a situation when they say they were forced because of the when they said that they were forced to do it or coerced for concern for their lives. Okay. Aval amru, but if they said anusim hayinu mechamat mamon, but if they said we were coerced or forced to do so, okay, because of monetary issues, it might be a bribe, it might be some other issue, ein ne'emanim, okay, they're not to be believed because basically they're incriminating themselves involved in
that I took a bribe.
that they were involved in a illegal
And now you're
activity.
dealing with a criminal.
Okay, so the Gemara answers, hold on a second. My Tama, what's the reason? What's your reasoning for saying this? The answer the Gemara is giving us is Ein Adam Mesim Atzmo Rasha, that no self-incriminating testimony is appropriate. Okay, so now we get to a new bright. Tanu Rabbanan says this bright. Ein ne'amanim leposlo divrei Rabbi Meir. Okay, Rabbi Meir says they are not to be believed to invalidate them. Okay?
Ever.
What's at whatever point, at whatever point. V'chachamim omrim, but the sages say ne'amanim. Okay, we can believe them. It's right possible. Bishleim l'Rabbanan. That's understandable. The view of the rabbis. Why? Kita amayu. Why? Because their reasoning is the following: Shehapesha asar, hu hapesha hetir. That the very testimony that could forbid something for them may also permit something to them. Okay? Eli the Rabbi Meir ma'itama. But for Rabbi Meir, what's the reasoning that he says that they're never to be trusted? Bishlema psule edut. That's understandable if for some reason they are invalid witnesses. Okay, namely, malve gufe meikara midak diyek umechatam. Okay, that in that situation, okay, maybe we're going to say, okay, that why? Because the person who is making the loan, he himself initially, I'm going to say, is going to examine carefully the status of the witnesses he's going to use before he has them sign the document. Okay, Ketanim Nami, and maybe even if we're talking about minors, there too. Kidda Rabbi Shimon ben Levi, because there we would follow the issue presented by Rabbi Shimon ben Levi. The Amar Reish Lakish, we'll go over just a little bit, who said in the name of Reish Lakish, what? Chazaka ein ha'edim chotmim al hashtar. We have a presumptive legal situation that witnesses don't sign on the document, ela im kein ne'eseh begadol, unless it was done by somebody who is
certified an adult.
recognized as an adult. Okay, ela anusim ma'itama. But what do we mean then when we say that they were coerced or forced?
And you still don't believe
Right?
them.
Amar Rav Chisda kasavar Rabbi Meir, who holds like the view perhaps, okay, the following. Edim she'amru lahem chitmu sheker va'al tahargu. Okay, sign falsely, okay, and it won't kill you. Yehargu va'al yichatmu sheker. They should allow themselves to be killed, okay, and not sign falsely.
Or as I like to put it, Rabbi Meir holds from the big four, not just.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. Let's just bring that in, and so the people understand. Amarle Rabba, says Rabba, hashta ilu atu lekaman la'amluche. What if the person was going to be to change his mind, to consult us? Amrinan laho zilu chatamu velo titkalun. We basically would say, go and sign it and don't be killed. Why? Damar, because we say, Ein lecha davar she'omed b'fnei pikuach nefesh, ela avodat kochavim, begilui arayut, ushvichud adamim bilvad. And that's basically where we're going to stop. Okay? All right, you're very appreciated. Thank you. That's where we're going to stop.
Who are you visiting?